They were probably a little bit tipsy, but they, at least in the beginning, the writer tells us that one of the characters said, we're not going to get completely drunk tonight. And they sent the flute girl out of the room. Okay. So, wow, a traditional lecture, yuck. But I guess we have to do it.
I feel like we haven't had one in a while.
I know. So here we go. And we'll finish early today, I'm sure. So this is just kind of an idea. If you think about, and Minnie, you might want to move, because that chair is probably blocking your view. Think about our syllabus as kind of like the highlights from the history of Western philosophy. So when you watch the evening news and they do the sports reporting, they'll give you the highlights from a game.
Yeah, a little bit.
So you see kind of the chronology of the game, but you only actually see a few minutes of it. That's kind of like what we're doing. We're looking at the highlights of Western philosophy.
Oh.
But hopefully by looking at those highlights, you're picking up on some of the important threads and concepts and ideas. And that, Tyler, are you on phone?
No.
Okay,
I'm
just looks like
looking
you are.
at the
Sorry. Pick up on some of the important concepts and ideas that the history of Western philosophy has given us. So we're starting off in the ancient world. Many historians, not all, would divide Western history into 3 periods, right? You probably got this in humanities. Ancient, medieval, or Middle Ages, modern, that's us. I think we're still in the modern era. Some people think this is the postmodern era. Depends on whom you ask. So we studied the Mediterranean philosophers, Thales and Pythagoras and all those guys, Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, and all of them influenced each other. It's like an ongoing conversation in the way they influenced each other. Today we're moving on to the Epicureans and Stoics. So 2 schools of thought, the Epicureans and Stoics. We're really learning about 2 schools of thought today. We're going to read the writings of a Stoic author, Marcus Aurelius. Epicureanism is wonderful, and if any of you find yourself interested in it, I'd be glad to furnish you with readings. But again, we don't have time to do everything that we would maybe like to do. I like to use images to help me remember basic ideas. So in the ancient world, these 2 architectural images can be ways of thinking about the main ideas within these philosophies. This picture is the Parthenon. You can kind of see it more clearly on the handout.
Did that get destroyed?
No, it's still there. Do you know what it is? The Parthenon?
I don't.
It's one of these, it's an icon. It's in Athens. It's on a hill. It was the temple dedicated to Athena, the patron goddess of the city. So there's a nice little tidbit for a final exam, right?
There's a replica in Nashville.
Is there?
Yeah.
I'd love to see that,
The
like
whole-
life-size.
It's a whole life-size everything, and it even has like a life-size of Athena.
Neat.
Do they continue to use it?
I don't think anyone really worships Athena anymore, but people visit it as a tourist site. The artwork on the porticos was taken by the British when they were in their colonizing frenzy, and some of that's in the British Museum now.
Oh, wow.
But
Yeah,
the temple
it
itself
got
is still
destroyed
there.
through the war from Canada.
But it's yeah, you can see that it's not its original glory, but the
You can't go
structure's
inside,
still there.
could you? No, right?
I don't know. I wish I could go to Athens. I've never been.
I think the one in Nashville.
But yeah, field trip.
School.
$500,000 field trip. I'd love to. But what this speaks to me is that the Greek love of beauty, the importance of the divine, that transition from the mythology of the ancient world into a philosophical worldview. Remember that with the Mediterranean philosophers? From myth to natural philosophy. This is a temple to Athena, one of those ancient goddesses. So that reminds me that people were transitioning from a mythical worldview into a more scientific and philosophical worldview. That's important to remember. And then the whole structure is based on proportions. The Greeks believed that beauty could be defined by mathematical proportions. We saw that in the thinking of Pythagoras. So to me, this is just kind of a mental icon of the idea of ancient philosophy. This, it's hard to see in the slide, but it's a Roman aqueduct. We're still in the ancient world. I'll talk about it.
Okay.
But we're shifting gears from the Greek Mediterranean mindset into more of a Roman cultural milieu. And there are some differences in their thinking and their culture that the philosophy of Stoicism captures. So we'll talk a little bit about Roman, who the Romans were and what they were like, and how Stoicism relates to that. At least I think it does. But let's talk first about Epicurus. Again, just going to share a little bit with you about his thinking. You can decide whether you want to research it or to explore it further.
I like that line. Don't worry,
Yes.
be happy.
That is Epicurus. Don't worry, be happy. That is essentially what his philosophy was about. I like to think of it as a Jimmy Buffett philosophy. Hanging out on the beach, drinking a margarita, not worrying about anything. But there's a whole metaphysics that undergirds it that we should probably think about. So Epicurus' family was from Athens, but apparently they moved from place to place, and his mother made a living as a kind of shaman, or witch doctor, as some people like to say, kind of like what some people might call a superstitious form of healing. Some historians think that because he saw that and disagreed with what she was doing, it turned him off to religion. So it turned him off to the whole idea and the whole concept of superstition. So Epicurus, you can see in his writings and his thinking, and those who write about him, he really despised what he would call superstitious thinking.
So you disliked it?
Say again, please?
So,
He was not an atheist, but his attitude toward the gods was really different.
so if I have like my ritual like that, I think it's like a superstition for me, he will disagree with it.
Yeah, and you took the global religions course with me, right?
Yeah.
This shamanism or shamans is actually a highly respected part of indigenous religions that today I would show respect toward. So I don't use that term. In a way, this is part of indigenous culture. So as a theologian, my attitude towards this is actually kind of positive. But Epicurus despised it. We had this discussion in my class on Tuesday. Oh man,
I
this
got
is
it.
embarrassing. And this is all being caught on videotape. On Tuesday, where one of the students was talking about these voodoo rituals people do. It's part of an indigenous religion, voodoo, magic. And we were questioning, there was a very skeptical person in the room who was saying, that's all BS, it doesn't work.
Well, she's gonna get voodoo.
But there were other people who really did accept that and believe in it.
Well, I don't
So
think
it's a fundamental philosophical question. Are you going to be a hardcore scientific materialist, or do you believe there's some sort of spiritual energy in the world?
Does anyone believe in voodoo?
Yes, people still do practice it. It's mostly Haiti,
Do you believe in voodoo?
but many Haitians are coming to the United States because of the natural disasters and poverty that they're suffering. So it's odd, but this kind of does tie into what we're seeing in terms of religious diversity today. But he studied the philosophy of Democritus. What was Democritus' metaphysical claim? According to Democritus, what was everything? Democritus? Mediterranean?
No.
That's Pythagoras.
Everything's water.
Who said it? Atoms.
Adam's got it.
Good, atoms. Everything is atoms. Did you have a question or a comment?
I did have. I was going to ask you, since you're a Catholic, right?
Yes.
So then you believe in voodoo?
I don't believe in it, but I accept that there are people who do, and I respect their traditions. I see some beauty and truth in the belief. And in fact, some of there's stuff I don't want to say on the camera. But I respect the traditions of other cultures and religions, and I see some truth to the idea that we're all connected spiritually. And there are some things that happen in the world that are very hard to explain through pure scientific materialism. Tyler.
I don't mean to get off topic, but do you believe in I don't want to say ghosts, but
This is important. This is actually a philosophical question. How are we using verbs to describe how we think? I am very careful with verbs. The word believe, I reserve that for religious faith. I believe in God, I believe in the creation, I believe that Jesus is the Son of God, the Holy Spirit, etc. But I use other words like think, infer, we talked about that, accept, and assume for other thought processes. Go ahead.
But to believe is that.
We get into trouble when we use that word carelessly. So I do not let me think about
To
this.
believe is that you mean it's real? That's what you mean. That's what I think.
On faith. And inference, faith and inference are two different things, right? Inference is when you have evidence. You saw something, and you drew a conclusion based on what you saw. That's not religious faith. That's science. So there are two different ways of thinking, and it is so important. This is important that we separate these things. I'm glad you guys are asking me this.
So do you believe in God?
Do I believe in
assume
ghosts
God?
was your question, right?
I don't say it's ghosts, it's like, it's spirits.
Yes, because as a person of religious faith, I do think that the soul is immortal, and that the spirit, in some way that I cannot explain, outlasts the body. In that sense, I would say yes. Do I think that those spirits wander the earth troubling people? That isn't part of my belief. But my belief system does have this idea that we can pray for people who have passed on. We can pray for those who have died. And that those who have died who are holy can pray for us. So that we do have some sort of connection with the souls of those who have passed on. In that very limited sense, I would say I believe in ghosts. Do I think that people have experienced things that can be explained through a belief in ghosts? Yeah. I've heard stories from people of experiences they have had that are really hard to explain without a belief in ghosts. So I'm on the fence about whether I accept.
Do you accept ghosts?
Do I accept ghosts? I'm not sure. I believe in the saints and in the souls of people being immortal. I believe that on faith. I also think it's reasonable. I'm not sure whether I accept the existence of what we call ghosts.
So if the door got shut closed, are you going to infer that was a ghost then? Since you
I can
had
infer
Excellent.
that's it.
Excellent. You could use the word inference for ghosts. You could use it as an explanation for something you saw. This is great. You guys, this is so important. It's something I've wanted us to talk about for a while. Using different verbs to distinguish precisely how you are thinking. Even in your internal dialogue with yourself, it is so important. I'd love to see you doing this. I'm glad the word infer has made its way into your vocabulary. Let's keep doing this.
Yeah.
Let's be careful with how we use the term believe. For example, people ask me, do you believe in evolution? What would I say?
No.
No, I think it's true.
You think it's true?
I do think it's true. Evolution happens. I infer that the theory is correct. It is a rational explanation for the diversity of life on this planet. But I don't believe in it because it's not a matter of faith. It's not a matter of religious faith. And that's so important. People think there's a conflict between religion and science because they misuse this word. Kenny?
So I can't say belief for anything besides. Well, I can.
That's my
but,
choice. That's how I
okay,
use it.
Okay, I understand.
Right. And I think that in the English language in the U.S. today, we're very careless with how we use the word believe. Like, and if you're reading about science, journalists will write, scientists believe that. Scientists don't believe anything. They infer and they conclude, right? And they measure. Am I right? So I just hate it when people say or write, scientists believe.
So
It just
a
drives me
priest
nuts.
believes, then would you agree with that? A priest,
A priest, well, a priest is a human being.
right? So
As a religious person, he might believe in God, but as a human being, he might accept science. In fact, the Catholic Church teaches that the theory of evolution is acceptable. That is our official teaching. We don't have to accept it as Catholics, but we're encouraged to because it's sound science.
but we don't believe in Big Bang, right?
We don't believe in it, but we accept that it probably happened.
All right. So
These are great questions. Let's talk more about this when we do modern philosophy.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love this class. All right.
oh yeah.
So Democritus,
Aww.
atoms. So he understood everything as atoms. And this was one of his ideas. The body and soul are made up of atoms which disperse when we die. Different from Aristotle, who thought of the soul as simply the form of the body, but the same kind of conclusion. So the soul is just kind of like smoke or something that's somehow inside of your body, and when you die, it just goes back into the universe. So death is the end. And therefore, there's nothing to be afraid of. Death isn't something to be afraid of. So that's a metaphysics which underpins his ethics, which is don't worry, be happy. So you see how metaphysics and ethics are connected? So there's no afterlife. There are gods, but they do not interfere with human life. They don't mess with us. We don't have to worry about them. So that was his attitude to God. So the goal of Epicureans is atarxia, which means unstirred upness, which means tranquility. Just be calm. This might fit some of you. It's a pleasure-seeking philosophy, but it's not hedonistic. Pleasure is important to Epicurus, but not going overboard. He established a kind of like a hippie commune called the Garden outside of Athens. He focused on pleasure, but through moderation. You will be happiest if your needs are very simple, right? So a few sets of clothing, but not a whole closet full. A decent house, but not a mansion. Who needs that? Who needs a $1,000 mortgage payment, right? So he focused on pleasure, physical, but also the pleasures of friendship, but in simplicity and moderation. David,
Oh, I thought you were asking who wanted $1,000.
do you want a mansion?
If I can.
Why would you want a $1,000 a month mortgage payment?
If I'm rich like that, why not?
If you're rich, sure. Yeah, if you can afford it, terrific. But is your wealth depending on the stock market, which could crash? Or is it depending on a sports contract? If so, fantastic.
Yeah, those guys make
Yeah.
$34 million a year.
But that's very few people. Most of us have to live kind of simply if we
Most
want
of
to
them
be
just
happy.
make 10 million, don't worry.
Yeah.
Just 10.
But how many people actually get that right? Friendships were very important to Epicurus. Friendships and relationships. So if you're the type of person who would prefer, for example, in your life to live with a few close friends or a family, that's your preferred lifestyle, you're more like an Epicurean than a Stoic. Stoics are very solitary people. Epicurean, the word is often used today to mean pleasure-seeking. So people who seek out pleasure, but it should never be used to mean overindulgence. Pleasure, but in moderation. So sitting on the beach, living a simple life, drinking a margarita, just enjoying life.
That's what he believed in?
Yeah, it's really what he believed in because of his metaphysics. So he believed. So he has very few writings, at least that I know of. One letter. His thought is mostly known through the work of the Roman poet Lucretius, who wrote a poem, a lengthy poem entitled On the Nature of Things. He explains Epicurean views on sense and sensation, the soul and the body, death, those human realities. So if you're interested in pursuing the thought of Epicurus further, those are readings to turn to. Okay. So that's Epicureanism. Questions about it? It's just something to be aware of. You might want to explore it. In some semesters, I've done both with readings and seminars, but we just don't have time today, or this fall. Now we're going to shift gears to a completely different philosophy. I mean, almost like night and day difference. Stoicism. So Stoicism. Stoicism flourished in the Roman world, although it began in Greece. And so this is why I personally feel like it's important to think about Roman culture. The Romans were very good at three things. Building was one of them. This is a picture of an aqueduct. It's like a channel that carries water from a spring in the mountains into a city. They would stretch for hundreds of miles. It still works. How many cities have 2,000-year-old water infrastructure that's still good? These people knew how to build stuff. Manny?
And also, isn't the was it concrete or cement that they used to make, is the recipe still lost to this day, isn't it?
Interesting. I don't know that. If you want to research that for the class, I'd appreciate it. They had used some type of concrete to put their buildings together.
I'm pretty sure I saw it that they said that the recipe is still lost to them.
But they had it. The Romans developed it and used it.
Yeah, that.
Fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. So they knew how to build stuff and you'll see that Stoicism has a strength. It's meant for strength and endurance as a philosophy.
They said it created about the same time as the Epicureans.
Let me think. Roughly around the same time period, but I don't have dates in my head. So we're looking at after Aristotle, kind of bleeding into the early ADs. In fact, the writer that we're going to read lived in the 2nd century AD. So we're kind of moving into the AD time period. Mm-hmm. So maybe 500 years or so after Socrates. So they were very good at building, they were very good at governing. The Romans gave us the idea of the rule of law. Is that something you guys are familiar with? We take it for granted. In most early human traditional societies, justice was based on the decisions of a person. A judge or a chieftain or a shaman or whoever was prominent in that community. That person would make decisions. The Romans, or the Greeks, gave us democracy, which means the community makes decisions. But the Romans gave us the concept of the rule of law. In other words, you have a body of laws, and that's what governs everybody's behavior. So how many of you have a driver's license? Almost everybody? Okay. When you went into the Office of Motor Vehicles to get your driver's license, did you have to pay a fee?
Mm-hmm.
No. Did anybody? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
Let me ask you this. Raise your hand. if the person behind the counter also demanded a bribe from you. In other words, you had to pay them an extra $50 to get that license, did you?
I didn't
No.
show my,
That's the rule of law.
why?
By and large, our government functions according to a set of rules, and people don't violate it. In other countries, it happens.
Oh, yeah, I did. I have in other
Okay,
countries,
can
yeah.
you-
I paid extra,
But did it go into that
So-
person's pocket?
I don't know, to take my test in advance, because she was saying it was full.
I don't know, you might have been screwed. Hopefully not. But normally, people, and of course there's corruption in our government, there's violence in our police forces. But by and large, our country follows the rule of law. There are rules, and our government follows them. And that's a gift of the Romans.
I'm probably in 2 countries already. We pay out the police. It feels typical over there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's typical in a lot of places.
Yeah.
We're so lucky. One of the greatest blessings of living in the United States is that by and large, we have the rule of law.
Well,
So in the gut, it was a gift of the Romans.
would
their
you
culture.
would you rather give a cop $50 than go to take a speeding ticket? Something that.
If I were an Epicurean, I'd say yes.
But I'm asking you as.
An Epicurean would
Chris.
say yes.
I'm asking you, Dr. Chris.
My leanings are more Stoic, and I think that duty and preserving the laws of society are important. That is how a Stoic would think. This is a great image for Stoicism because one of the things Marcus Aurelius says is, we're like stones within a larger structure. It's not about me as an individual. I'm part of something bigger than myself. I'm part of a larger structure, and I have a role to play, and that's my duty, my responsibility. What is the third thing the Romans were really good at? What did they do to all the people around them?
Like,
They waged war. And I've been told by some teachers that they didn't intend to build an empire, they kind of stumbled into it. Rome, the city, would be attacked by some barbarian tribe. The Romans would fight them off and gain that territory. So gradually their frontiers just expanded and expanded until they kind of administered what we would call an empire, and it was the job of the emperor to kind of police that whole area with the Roman armies. This is a reenactment of an ancient Roman legion in Britain. But I do want to show you a clip. Have you seen the movie Gladiator?
Oh yeah.
I love that film because it embodies some aspect of Roman culture and it embodies some aspect of Stoicism. If it'll run, if YouTube's working today, I want to look at just the first 3 minutes of the film. Just pay attention, notice what's happening, the details, and we're going to try to identify the ways it expresses Stoicism. Just in that first 3 minutes, there are a lot of Stoic concepts. I want you to see those. Hopefully it'll I haven't checked if this needs a flash player or something to run. Hopefully it doesn't. And then we'll take a break.
Oh, I love
This
this
is just
commercial.
an ad, right?
You can skip
I
right
love
there,
this commercial.
Bob.
yeah, you can skip ad.
Oh, no, don't skip it. Shh, Kenny, don't. No?
Yes, thank you.
Do you guys know what's happening in the scene?
Yeah, it's fabulous.
Well, not yet.
No,
Not yet, but
This is in his mind.
yeah.
I have seen
He's on the eve of a battle, and he's closing his eyes and thinking about a place and people that he loves.
I haven't seen the movie.
Okay, we
It's a
won't give
great,
it all
it's a
away.
great movie.
It's fantastic. One of the best films I've ever
So
seen.
long. Is it?
It's
Oh.
It's like, it's really long.
I hate the beginning though.
We couldn't
This
watch
part,
it in
I hate
class.
the beginning.
So
No,
here he
that's
is.
the guy from Game
The eve of a battle.
Tell me that's him. Is that him from Game of Thrones?
No.
Yeah, this is Ned Stark.
No, stop.
So they're in the middle of Europe, fighting some French tribe somewhere, French or German tribe. It's looking at this little bird. It's watching something natural.
Russell Crowe.
Look at how organized the Roman army is, and contrast it with the European tribe that tries to attack them. That's Marcus Aurelius in the film, but I think of him as being more like Maximus, this general, like when I think of who he was.
Move those catapults forward, they're out of range.
Range is good.
The danger to the cavalry
Is acceptable. Agreed.
This is their scout coming back without a head.
They say no.
People should know when they're conquered.
Would you cut this? Strength and honor.
Strength and honor.
Strength and honor. At my signal, unleash hell.
And he does.
So as I go through the kind of characteristics of Stoicism, let's go back to the come back to the clip and think about how it embodies some of those things. I don't know who made this film, but I think they were thinking of Stoic philosophy when they wrote some of it. Okay. So the Roman war machine was so effective partly because they were so organized. The whole battle scene plays out and you kind of see it there.
It's Riley Scott.
Who?
Riley Scott.
Oh, we were going to take a break. Let's do that. You guys want to take a 5-minute break? Get up, get out of here, because you're going to be sitting for another 20 minutes or so. Yeah, 5 minutes.
Hey, Chris, I have a question. Wasn't also their